Good evening. Welcome to the January 29th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. At this time, I'll ask you to please silence your electronic devices. If you're going to hold a private conversation, please take it outside. This meeting is being recorded by FCTV. If there is anyone else recording this meeting, please identify yourself for the record. If you are here to speak on any matter before the commission, and we do encourage you to do so, there'll be an opportunity during the public comment portion of each hearing. At the appropriate time, please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and speak into the microphone. For the record, for quorum purposes, Kevin and Peter are called up tonight. All right. First up, other business. Review and vote conservation restriction for Woods Hole Road, map parcel 50-02-000-000F.
00F. Yes, that's right. Good evening. My name is Alan Decker. I'm the Director of Land Protection Program with Buzzards Bay Coalition based in New Bedford. I am with you this evening because we have an extraordinary opportunity to permanently protect this almost 30.5 acre parcel of open space that spans between Woods Hole Road and Quissit Avenue. I know you have in your packets the maps. I apologize. I didn't know I could have it up on the big screen. If anybody would like paper maps, I have them if you're interested. Also have paper maps if you'd like to have those as well. But I just wanted to show you quickly on these maps, this parcel is the parcel that's outlined in red. Yes?
I can bring it up on GIS. I wanted, that would be helpful.
That's fine. Okay.
Would you like me to?
Sure.
Okay.
The more the merrier. Okay. All right.
You can stand there and give your
Yep.
presentation, and I'll just pull
Okay.
this up real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, give it into the microphone, otherwise people at home can't hear you.
Understood. Why don't I stand on this side? There we go. So, well, sure.
With me. Mr. Chairman, do you have the map?
Sorry?
Do you have this item? No? Okay.
Oh, we all do.
Everybody but me?
No.
Okay, so I have, would you like paper maps?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
It was emailed,
Just email to everybody.
Oh, yeah,
Last week.
okay, okay. It's, yeah, it's on the machine.
It was last week, we
doesn't
can't
exist.
remember.
Mr. Chair, with your permission?
thank you.
All right, very well. So, as those are being circulated, this is a currently forested parcel that was donated to the Buzzards Bay Coalition.
Yep.
We are the owners of it, and we are partnering with the 300 Committee to put a conservation restriction over the property to ensure its permanence as conservation land. Conservation restriction document was circulated, and you've had the opportunity to take a look at it. The reserved rights that we're looking to hold on to for this property are in support of its property, in support of our use of it as supporting our educational programming, as well as our opportunity to have environmental research done on the property and make it accessible to visitors with express permission from us as to access on it. The amenities we're looking to have on the property, walking paths and trails, other elements that will enhance visitors' experience on the property, boardwalks if necessary, bog boards, although this property is mostly, almost entirely upland property. We are reserving the ability to create a driveway that will run from Woods Hole Road back to the adjoining property you see on the first map, which is outlined in yellow, is a property that we own. It has a residential structure on it that we're going to use as some office space and also potentially as rental space for a tenant. But then right behind the ION and Coalition and the yellow parcel, you'll see another building that is a barn structure that we intend to use for meetings, community meetings and the like. So this access road, access driveway, will provide safe and effective access from Woods Hole Road out to the property. There will also be a parking lot developed perviously, a gravel lot, pervious surfacing for 20 vehicles to support parking for use of the facility. There it is. So it's this parcel here, this large one, between, as I said, Quistit Avenue and Woods Hole Road. You'll see on the second map, vast majority of the property is designated by natural heritage as habitat for rare species. And on the third map, it just gives you context as to where this property is located in context with other protected property. You'll note Conservation Commission holds a property across Woods Hole Road, not directly, but there. And we have a joint conservation restriction on a couple of properties with the 300 committee across Quistit Avenue, about 8.5 acres there. I know you have a full agenda tonight. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm happy to answer questions that you might have about the conservation restriction, but what I'm seeking tonight is your support for our protecting this property with the 300 committee through the signing of what's called the municipal certification, which speaks to the conservation values that are being protected, including the rare habitat species, the fact that almost 1,100 feet of Quistit Avenue frontage will remain as it is today, and almost 700 feet of frontage on Woods Hole Road, absent the entranceway for the driveway, will remain as it is today. Happy to take questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Jen, do you want to start?
Alan, could you, I know one of my commissioners is, can you just point on that map where the driveway is going to be? I didn't bring the plan up that I got.
Of course.
You can use the mouse if you want, might be easier.
Not sure.
Just
I'm
wiggle the
going
mouse.
to use the original mouse, the original pointer. So the access point is going to be here on this northern frontage. It's going to then curl back along this way to right. This is the other parcel that shows on your map as yellow. It will curl to right about here. And the parking area is going to be in this area, slightly on this parcel. This is what you would know perhaps as 18 Woodruff Lane, which is actually just a right-of-way that runs between this property and out to Quistit Ave. So the permitting and the like is already in process for that. The anticipation is that driveway will be put in sometime between March and May of this year, so that it's in place and we're up and running with use of that conference center, the so-called barn on 18 Woodruff, at the beginning of the summer.
Just to let, Mr. Chairman, just to let the board know, we did receive a request. Falmouth Engineering is designing the driveway. They were required to get a letter from the Planning Board and from the Conservation Commission on the presence of wetlands and whatever local permits might be necessary. Your staff did go out. We did, Mark and Kevin did walk the site in the area of the driveway, and there's no wetland resource areas in that area.
Great.
Okay, so if anybody does want to see a plan of the driveway, we do have it downstairs in the office.
Need state permitting too, no?
Not wetlands permitting. They
No,
needed
no,
it,
curb
they
cut.
needed it
State
for the
highway.
curb cut. They
Yeah,
needed-
so-
Yeah,
Sorry. That's right. Woods Hole Road is a state highway, and so we are in the process with Mass DOT in getting approval of what's called the curb cut.
Yeah.
There is actually a curb there. I didn't know that.
yeah, we did need to write a letter to, for Mike, Mr. Bertzelli to submit to MassDOT.
And you guys didn't see any restrictions there?
No.
Okay.
No? Mark and Kevin walked the whole length of it.
You guys have anything else?
No?
What's the current access to those buildings?
So the current access to those buildings is via the right-of-way that the easement that allows access along Woodruff Lane, which is.
Can you show where that
in
is?
name only. Well, it runs effectively right between 279 and 273 Quistit Ave, straight back to the house. This is the house. This is the barn. It's a paved driveway to the house and a gravel driveway, if you will, to the barn.
And then I'm not amenable to letting you continue that?
It's not amenable for the potential use that we envision for
It's public use.
the conference center, if you will. We get a tenant in 18, we would, I think, allow that tenant to use the gravel road. I've not literally been there, but it's my understanding that it looks effectively like you're driving up a driveway literally between two people's houses. We'd prefer not to have our access for the things that we want to do at the barn between two residences. We'd prefer it, and again, I'm not super familiar with Quistit Ave, but that's not, as it's my understanding, that's not the best access point. It's better to have this engineered, more safely placed access driveway off of Woods Hole Road.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else?
Is that, okay. I appreciate your question.
I'm all set, thank you.
No question.
Steve?
No questions.
No questions.
All right.
So I'll put a motion on the table to, what are we doing? To have you work with whoever it is to
approve the conservation restriction.
approve the conservation restriction.
Second.
That's fine. Would you also, just as part of that motion, include approving and signing the municipal certification?
I certainly would.
I appreciate that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
You're the last one to sign the municipal cert.
Any further discussion from the board?
It's in progress.
Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you very much. As you know, just for general education, one of our next steps is to then come in front of the Board of Selectmen for their approval of the conservation restriction. The municipal certification will be submitted to them, evidencing your support for this project. We appreciate it very much. Also, just want to close the loop very quickly. Last time I was in front of you, we were looking at a conservation restriction at 102 Chappaquoit Road. That did get completed. CR got put in place, so 7 of that 9 acres is now permanently protected. The very next day, the property was sold. So we have new owners that we are now working with. But yeah, it was a bang-bang transaction.
Good,
So it doesn't often
Nice
happen
efforts.
that way.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
So,
It's for
yeah,
you.
This is
If I
yours.
get that, I'll scan it and then I'll email it
Perfect.
back to you. Perfect.
You can just
All right.
date it.
I will.
Great, thank you.
Very much.
Oops.
Those things are heavy.
Evidently so.
Next up, vote minutes, January 15th.
Read them, they look fine. Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, January 22nd. And this was corrected to show the presence of Mr. Patton.
I make a motion, it was as discussed, and it was a little,
I was
Accept them.
not.
Second?
I was not.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
was that our 7-minute meeting?
Sorry?
That was our 7-minute meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, another long one.
I was surprised that Sam couldn't make it. 7 minutes, you would have liked it.
New record. Request for continuance under a notice of intent. Scott Tynell, 163 Bay Road, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct shellfish aquaculture within Rand's Canal and Megansett Harbor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until March 4th.
So moved.
Second.
March 4th.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue to March 4th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Another request for continuance, Susan Choate Garland, 42 Chase Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct targeted treatment and manual removal of Phragmites from the bordering vegetated wetland and the edge of salt marsh on site.
They're requesting a continuance until February 19th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Mary Ann Pesh Choate, 58 Cape Cod Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise, R-A-Z-E, existing house and construct a single-family dwelling and pool with all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until February 5th. There was a disconnect between my office and that office. They were under the impression they were on for the 5th.
Okay.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman,
2-5.
they could improve the marking on the property.
That's,
More
Thank
moved,
you.
second.
So we have a motion
More
on,
moved, I second. Are you taking notes?
no, FCTV is taking notes.
Oh, okay, More moved it, I seconded it.
Thank you.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, requests for determination of applicability. Barbara and Gary Schneider, 71 Sandcastle Drive, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to vista prune according to FWR 10.18, 10B.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Anne Marie Senazisio, 145 Sea Pit Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct landscape improvements, including removing trees, overhanging the existing dwelling, replanting trees, and adding additional plantings.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next up, Alan and Helen Clark, 80J Little Island Road, West Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install a 12 by 16 shed in an area where a shed previously existed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Next up, James McLaughlin, Town of Falmouth, Lot 000B, Great Bay Street, at the intersection of Hiawatha and Great Bay Street, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to replace an existing set of stairs damaged by recent storms and to remove an additional existing damaged set of storms.
Stairs.
I'm sorry, set of stairs.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And lastly, East Marine Corporation, 89 Falmouth Heights Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to replace 4 licensed pier pilings on 2 existing piers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next up, continued request for determination of applicability. Richard and Patricia Torre, 57 Cape Cod Road, West Falmouth, Mass, for after-the-fact permission to install a water service to the dwelling and rebuild a section of stone wall.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant has requested a continuance until March 4th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we're looking for a continuance to March 4th. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next up, William J. and Ellen C. Wedge, 78 Associates Road, West Falmouth, Mass, for permission to repair an existing foundation and to construct second-floor additions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant has requested to withdraw without prejudice.
Do we need to vote?
No
Okay,
action.
no, we just move right
All
on.
right, moving on. Request for a hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up is Susan Garland, 42, that's been continued. Next up is Mary and Joseph Noonan, 183 Surf Drive, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to demolish the existing single-family dwelling and construct and maintain an elevated single-family dwelling with parking below, decks, access stairs, elevator, driveway reconfiguration, leaching trench for roof runoff, and all associated utility installation, excavation, grading, mitigation planting, and landscaping. Mr. Santos, you're up.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Good evening. For the record, Tim Santos from Holmes and McGrath, representing the applicant. Also with me this evening is the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Noonan, as well as the architect, Greg Stronian from Westcon Architectural. The property is located at 183 Surf Drive. The resource area is on or within 100 feet of the property. Fresh river, a coastal bank, distant riprap along the river, as well as land subject to coastal storm flowage. Property is currently developed with an existing single-family home, as you see here. Deck and patio, served by town water and town sewer. So we're here tonight proposing a tear down and rebuild. On the second slide we have here, the proposed dwelling. The applicant is proposing to tear down the existing dwelling and construct a new elevated dwelling. There is approximately, the existing dwelling is approximately 927 square feet, and the proposed new dwelling, square footage-wise, on the first floor is 1,350 square feet, which is above the velocity zone elevation of 15. But on the ground level, we do have an enclosure for a garage, elevator, stairway, and some storage of 887 square feet. We are proposing for the increase in square footage of 569 square feet. We are proposing 1,710 square feet of mitigation plantings along the northeast and the southeast part of the lot. We do have the species shown on the plan, as well as 2 trees. The roof runoff will be directed to a leaching trench along the western lot line. And the driveway will remain as is, and we will extend that driveway in this area here in order to gain access for parking below the structure. The enclosure below is less than what currently exists, and we were trying to improve the benefit to the lot by elevating the house and maintaining some storage of below at the ground level, similar to what was approved by this board on, I believe this is 189 and 199 Surf Drive. Those are immediately adjacent properties. If the board has any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them. Oh, and then there is one thing that staff and I did talk about, this afternoon. The distance between the house and shown on this plan is 9 feet. That goes to the actual zoning, 3-foot contour setback. And the distance of 7.2 feet that's shown in your package is 7.2 is from the corner board of the existing house to the top of the riprap. So that's the 7.2 versus the 9 feet. So when we originally did our plan, the 7.2 from this corner to the top of the riprap, it's still 7.2 from this corner to the top of the riprap, but the 9 feet is what needs to be shown for zoning. So that's what that discrepancy is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Tim, you're saying that so we have a shot on the existing plan that shows it from the old staircase
Yep,
to the revetment?
correct.
So you're saying that's not 9, that's actually 7
It's 9 to the 3-foot contour and
Okay,
7.2
got it.
to the top of the bank. It's the same,
Okay,
proposed and existing. It's
So-
just when that plan was created, before it was signed, it was only shown to the top of the riprap, and it
Okay.
should have been shown to the 3-foot contour, because that's what zoning requires.
okay. So I'll save that for my next point. When you gave me the 1352 square footage, that was the first floor? What about the second floor?
I have it, just hold on a second.
It's okay.
So the first floor is 1352, is that what I said?
I think that's what you
Yeah.
said.
And the second floor is 1438. Both of those floors are above the velocity zone elevation of 15. The first floor is actually set at 19.47, so it's over 4 feet above that velocity zone elevation of 15.
Yep. Well, as you know, Tim, this board has never really kind of looked at anything being above the flood zone. We take the square foot, you're in the velocity zone. So, we're looking at something like 3,669, if my math very quickly adds up, of structure. So, you know, you're looking at close to, why am I making this difficult for myself? You know, 2,700 square feet of structure being added into a high hazard area. So, the board's never looked at just what's on the ground. They've always looked at the entire structure in a whole when we're building in the velocity zone. So the board's gonna have to take that into consideration. More importantly is the last couple of projects, more recent projects the board have seen, specifically on 117 Surf Drive. They did limit that property owner when building on Surf Drive. They limited that interior where the breakaway panels is to just the area of the elevator. They did allow for a small kind of walking area around the elevator so they could get to both sides of the house. I'd have to double check, but that was a very small square footage. And I think it was less than half of what you're seeing. So the board needs to consider whether you want to stop these breakaway panel structures in this high hazard area and reduce that enclosure like you did at 117 Surf Drive. And the other one that comes to mind is it 45 or 145 Little Neck Bars Road out in West Falmouth? That area was restricted to just the stairway in the elevator area.
How about Nashawina Road?
Without, there was no garage on
Nashawina,
that.
10 Nashawina,
10.
0 Nashawina.
Not, I'm talking about the one out on the bluff.
Yeah, that one too.
That one, and then Nashawina as well, correct. So the board needs to think about that. Tim, I'm really concerned with building this structure 7.2 feet away from that revetment. I know that in the narrative, you said that a trench box will be used.
So I'm gonna kind of try to go step by step.
Okay.
So, the enclosure on the ground level first. So what the applicant, again, is trying to do is obtain storage, and I understand staff's policy and the board's policy and the comments, obtain storage in a garage similar to what was done on the 2 properties in front of him. So that's how the design came up for this property. I'm aware of other projects that have gone in recently where it's been reduced, but every property is supposed to be looked at differently, and that's why we're here. So that's how we came up with the lower level, similar to what was done and approved and reviewed by this board on 189 and 199. the total square footage of the livable space above, if you look at all of those houses, I'll guarantee you it's well over 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. I mean, everybody's raising their house up above that elevation and obtaining that habitable square footage. And I understand what you're saying, but I don't think we've ever talked about like a total mass. That's been talked about at other boards for like bulk calculations and zoning, but never here. We've always talked about the area below. As far as the construction, what we talked about in the notice, and Greg can talk to it too, is the piers and the footings for those piers will be done in sections. It's not, we're not gonna open the entire lower, like a continuous footing and piers. It'll be done in sections in order to protect that existing riprap that's there. So we did think about that. So it won't be one big excavation for the footing and the piers. It'll be done in sections. So the two closest piers will be done, and the closest pier is actually, I think it's 12 feet away from the top of that. And there's probably, the footing is probably an extra 2 feet, so it might be 10 feet to the top of that bank, because the pier is 18 by 18, and they sit on top of a footing, and I believe, how wide is that?
The pier is 18 by 18.
Yep, and it sits on top of the concrete footing that's 4 feet wide. So,
But you're gonna excavate for the footing,
correct.
and you're gonna have overdig.
Yeah, well, they'll be building it within the trench box. So it won't be an overdig in order to have, you know, angle of repose like a 45-degree back, because they're actually gonna build it inside the trench box in order to protect that bank.
Can that be done, Jamie, Courtney, my builders?
It's been done before, and
That close to the top of that revetment? Without
In water?
damaging that
well, the
revetment?
most vulnerable is once it's dug before the trench box is actually installed.
What was that?
The most vulnerable time is as it's excavated and just before the trench box is installed, but that's kind of simultaneous.
Yeah, I mean, normally, how they would dig is they would excavate down, they're not gonna excavate 5 feet down. They're gonna excavate a couple feet down, put the trench box in, then start digging, and the trench box will start dropping. I mean,
Yeah, 'cause
that's
I mean, you're-
typically how it's done, so it would be protecting
Okay.
the bank.
And do they have a contractor in
There
mind
is
yet?
no contractor. I have talked with the
Okay,
architect home
no, that's
picked
fine.
yet, but we have no problem setting up a site meeting and having a
No, yeah,
conversation.
so that's what it would be that this contractor is going to be bound to use this French box.
And
kind
if
of
there was something
technique.
different, then we'd have to discuss it with you, but ideally, that's what we
Definitely.
want to use now.
Well, if it's something different, you'll have to come and discuss it with the builders on my board.
That's not a
So
problem.
I can determine if
And they might have
it'll
a better
work.
way to do it, is
I'm
all
a
I'm saying.
biologist.
So,
Okay.
Let Courtney address that too.
Yeah, I will. I think that's all I had. It was just the enclosure with the breakaway panels that we are really, in the past couple of years, really working towards reducing that space, especially since the town is, undertaking a number of studies on, the coastal areas, specifically this area, and when it's going to flood and how much it's going to flood. On the positive, the plantings will do that area a tremendous amount of good. The site is devoid of vegetation right now, so the added vegetation will enhance that and add a little bit of wildlife habitat value. I'm just very concerned about the stability of that revetment, which is very old. While they're excavating that close to it, I think it is too close to the top of that revetment, but if you and Courtney think that it would be okay.
Groundwater there.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
I mean, that's what I would be worried
What's-
about.
what's the groundwater?
Is it 2 feet down?
Groundwater.
Groundwater.
Well, he's got the big drainage.
yeah, we do have a
The
detention.
dewatering basin.
We do have a dewatering basin at high elevations. I believe it's 1.8 over in that area, so it's about 3 feet down,
How far down does your footing have to go?
4 feet
Yeah.
down.
At least 4 feet.
At least 4.
What analysis have you done on the soils there?
I haven't done any analysis on the soils.
I have a real question about this because you've got an inlet going into, that's been there for a long time, and it's now contained by artificial revetments. And if you go back, those revetments weren't there, those are man-made. And my recollection is this area was a lot of marshland. So I worry about how much peat there is down there and what these footings will support, particularly that close to the. Huh?
I'll bet it is Pete.
Oh, I think that's all marsh in there, once upon a time. And, I'm very reluctant I think you need an engineering study just for all of these piers, because you got a big house and you're gonna be putting a lot of point loads there. That's not a very good thing. I've run into, in my own life, building in areas that are sensitive to this, and you get into these peat layers, and you're in peat and water and all kinds of stuff, and that doesn't support a typical foundation. You gotta have, there's a lot of engineering that hasn't been done here, and I'm not comfortable with this.
I'll let Greg, the architect, speak to.
Great.
For the record, Greg Sarunian, Principal at Rescom Architectural.
I'm sorry?
My name is Greg Sarunian from Rescom Architectural.
Thank you.
That won't do you any good.
No, not on?
Just have to.
Speak louder.
No, it works for people watching TV.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't work for anybody here.
I'll speak up.
Particularly somebody my age and old and deaf, so I want you to speak up.
So we've done these types of homes for 23 years. We've used the same foundation system. It's a little different. I haven't seen, I had an old engineer that sort of trained us into, using this. What you're talking about with the peat, we have run into that from time to time. I've never run into the entire site. We'll find sometimes there's a pocket that we need to deal with. But the way these footings are designed, they're designed as strip footings and not your typical pier footings. It makes a huge difference because you're getting much more bearing capacity. What you'll see in a lot of times is that they'll just do what's required for that one particular pier. The way we design it is we take it over a much larger area so that our bearing capacity can get reduced.
Have you done a soil analysis?
We have not. We would be doing that when we got into the construction drawings.
Well, the reason this comes to mind, and I hear what you're saying, I mean, you put a much wider footing in and you disperse the load and
Yeah, we
all of
also
that,
looked
right?
at the homes around.
Good, gold
There's
star
one-
for you.
There's one
But-
right next
Courtney,
to
let
it
him
on
answer your
either
question.
side, and they're all of similar size and scale, and some of those don't even look like they have any sophisticated foundation systems, so.
I understand, understood, I wanna see engineered drawings.
Well, we would have to
showing
do that in order to get a building permit.
Well, I wanna see it
Right.
because what happens if the design warrants, it may require more excavation. And in that sensitive an area, I wanna know that, and I think this board needs to know that before we can approve the project.
Well, we would have to be back before this board if we
So-
changed what the direction
No,
is.
you understand where I'm
There's a
coming
lot
from.
of money involved to get the
We
engineering
can't
done.
approve something on an assumption and that close to the edge. If you suddenly have a bigger footing, that changes the dynamic, and it changes what needs to be
You're
done to
approving
protect
the
the
footing
resource.
design that's
So,
presented.
I'm saying, come back to us when you have it all ready to go, and then we can talk about it.
Maury,
Um,
you ready?
I got the groundwater, we got the soil, because one of the things in your narrative as well is that the leaching trenches must be installed in stratum of coarse sand to allow proper functioning. And again, the soils are really important there, to know what's going on and if they'll work.
That is correct.
Okay. But you don't know what's there?
No, if the soils in the area of the leaching trench were unsuitable, they would excavate below
Be
that
stripped
leaching
out.
trench, strip it out, similar to what they do on a septic system.
Right.
So,
The
and
thing-
that's noted on details.
Yeah, I did notice that, but when you look at the groundwater at 3 feet, then you start, I mean, now we're putting discharge into groundwater. I mean, that's, you know, it's a tough situation, I understand, when you have groundwater and you have soils and, you know, you have a river next to you, it's hard. But we do have concerns about that. And then the other thing I had a concern with, was not a concern, just a question. On your architectural, you show I think it's, on the plan, it shows a raised condenser on raised wooden platform. Where is that on the house? Is that little teeny,
That's
little square bump out that looks
Yeah,
like
I'll-
2 sinks? Okay, got it.
right there.
Yep, okay. And, you know, Jen's concerns are ours. Thank you.
Good?
Yeah.
Jen, is this riverfront?
Yes.
Okay. I have no question.
I have a question about the process for the soil analysis. I don't want to beat that subject, but you didn't do a perk test per se because it's town sewer, I get that. But you wouldn't do a soil analysis as standard,
Typically,
it's a question. I'm not-
borings for construction are not done until all permits are in place, knowing that it's done under an assumption of what the architects and the structural engineers know of the surrounding area. And then they would do a boring once they're ready to finalize those structural plans to submit to the
Prior to a building permit?
building permit, correct. Honestly, I've been here 23 years, and I've never, it's the first time I've heard someone ask, and I'm not saying that we won't do it, but I've never had that request before, so. I'm not saying it's wrong either, just.
Trying to understand the process. Kevin?
I have to admit, I'm very nervous about not doing any kind of soil testing, especially given where this is, especially, you know, I did about boring in a pump station one time. The engineers told me it came in fine. And I had to explain to my board why we had to ship the entire amount to a dump in Utah. Because it was all contaminated. So I'm very nervous about this. We'll solve this problem later, okay? I don't, I can understand that this, for a residential project, I'm thinking of this like apples and oranges, but it just makes me nervous. If there's really, no information on what the ground is. Yeah, no, that's it.
Steve?
I had looked at the site and found the house to be an improvement unto the existing dwelling from a safety environmental point of view, and also view. I mean, you know, the houses in front are becoming enormous, and you're right about the conditions under which they were approved. Prior to my time on the Conservation Commission, not that I would have voted any differently, but nonetheless. I didn't think about the soil, so it wasn't something that I considered part of my purview to evaluate. I walked the site in 2 different conditions, after a rain, you know, that kind of, I got time to kill sometimes. Anyway, It appeared to be stable in sand, but, you know, what do I know what's down underneath the soil? But I was a little concerned about how close it was to the mortise riprap on that side. But it seemed to be generally an improvement over existing conditions. This was my current evaluation. I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Peter?
Okay, I agree with Steve that it would be an improvement, and I just wanted to summarize what your original proposal was, that you would try to get approval from the Concom, and then when you get most of the permits done, run the soil analysis. If the soil analysis said that you had to have a larger or different footing, you would return to this board
Everybody.
and change everything. Is that right?
Typically, final architectural and structural plans that are required for building permit, the final ones for construction aren't done until, because of the amount of money that they cost, are not done until after conservation and zoning approvals are obtained, typically. So the final structural design is done after all permits are in hand. I mean, the design of the structures that's shown there is the design that they plan on using, but the final permit plans are done when all local permits are in hand.
Okay. No further questions?
Mr. Chairman, may
Courtney.
Through the chair. My comment on that is, yes, under normal circumstances. However, in this situation, the construction engineering has a direct bearing on the site conditions and our jurisdiction. And so what we're asking for is that you get that stuff squared away. Now, the second comment I want to make, because apparently we kind of got sidetracked on it, is I have to agree with the administrator about the breakaway panels. I am not in favor of seeing breakaway panels or any of that, except for the area around the elevator and perhaps the access stairway to the second floor. So you're not gonna have my support on it, and I don't wanna listen to all the arguments, because we've heard them all.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, may I make one clarification? Tim, I don't believe it was your project, but this board has asked for a soil analysis when a house went up on piers. I do believe we did ask for one on one of the Moses Road properties. I don't think you were the engineer,
And
so
again,
you wouldn't know
I'm not
that.
saying that you did it, I was just saying
No, I
that
know. I'm
all
just
the
saying.
projects I presented enough of them on piers that
Oh, yeah.
it's just never been asked. If it was normal policy, then we'd get it done. And I've heard 4 board members say that they want it done, so
Yep.
to me, that means we need to get it done.
Okay, I'm just saying.
I'm not
it's-
saying I'm gonna sit here and say, no, close my hearing tonight. That's not what
No,
we're
I
saying.
just wanted to say, it's, you say we look at things in a very site-specific way, and on the site on Moses Road warranted the soil analysis prior to them closing the hearing, so
That's
it
understandable.
has been done. That's all.
Did you have something else?
No, I was just gonna say, I think what people want, but Tim knows what people want, so I don't have to repeat it. He's heard what people have said. I mean, this isn't asking for all of the structural plans, the stamped
I
plans. It's
understand that,
just
I understand.
asking for
The borehole.
some boreholes
I
analysis.
understand.
Give me a comfort level, digging that close to that revetment.
I understand. I'd just like to let the applicant talk. He just would like to talk to the board real quick.
Okay.
Thank you.
What we've normally done in the past is, during the excavation process, we ask to be present when they start digging, knowing that we're gonna wanna look at the soils, and then if we're questionable, we'll bring in a geotechnical engineer. So what I think I'd recommend on this one is, we kinda do similar to like a perk test, where we gonna have an excavator come, dig down a little bit. I think that'll give us a good indication of how the soils are gonna behave, and then we can schedule our geotech to be there and do the soil analysis, and he can write the report. So as long as the board has no issues having an excavator on site, doing a little test hole.
Why can't
would
you
be-
auger?
I'm sorry?
You can auger.
Yeah, but again, I think I'd rather have it open a little bit. That's all, I think it would be less inexpensive for the,
Well, as long as
if I
it's a
have to
mini
get a
excavator.
boring truck and an engineer, a geotech, he's in the $3,000 to $5,000 range, where we can do like we would for a perk test for a couple $100s, and will tell us the exact same thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, as long as it's not a, it's a mini excavator, you're not bringing in a,
Yeah, I just don't want of us, when we do that.
and you
then
put a
the board-
limit of work up where you're gonna dig.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that would be in the conditions when we,
First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name's Joe Noonan. My wife is Mary Noonan. We've been residents of Falmouth for well over 30 years. And I think that for those of you who have walked the property, the property has changed. The landscape has changed on Surf Drive. Our house is not on Surf Drive. It is a house removed from Surf Drive. And we've literally watched the dynamic of Surf Drive change over the last certainly 6-7 years.
Right.
We are currently in a small cottage that is now surrounded by very big homes that are on the same property. They're on the same soil. The riprap retainer we put in, we paid for that. Okay, so we paid for that to protect the wetlands. The house behind us doesn't have that, so it's natural wetlands, and their house goes right, their pilings are right on the river itself. So we thought we were making the property better when we did that, by certainly making it sounder. So our request really is, we've tried to design a house that my wife and I can retire in, and that's what our plan is, and really something that we could live in year-round. We're certainly not rich people. I think what you're asking is really for us to incur more expense on the project that we've already got significant expense just in the design phase. That's part of the reason we hired Rescom and Greg. Greg is a structural engineer. We're relying on his expertise to certainly build a house that's gonna cost us a lot of money, that's gonna withstand time, and it's certainly gonna withstand storms. The breakaway panels, we're surrounded by houses that this board has already approved with breakaway panels. And our intent was to really build less on the ground floor than our existing structure. And I believe it's less in square footage than what is currently on the ground right now with a very small ranch. So our ask was really to enclose the foyer stairway area and enclose a two-car garage so that we basically have protected cars in the winter as we plan to retire here. The rest of the house would be open, as you guys obviously want. I believe it's almost a 50-50, 50 enclosed, 50 open on the ground level. So, literally the houses that surround us, that are in front of us, that are actually on Surf Drive, and I think some of the examples that you've given are directly on the water. Ours are not. Our house as is has withstood 2 hurricanes on the ground level with no water damage. So we've certainly been through significant storms and significant flood tidal surges, and the house has withstood that. Our plans are certainly to build up with the breakaway panels that would be on the ground to be on hinges, and we really don't see any real liability to the property owners around us where debris would go to, go into their property or go into Fresh River. So that is what our plan is, but we've already incurred a lot of expense. and we would really like your approval to move forward on this project.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for us?
I just had two comments. The house is not really increased very much, only 6%, according to the calculations for your lot coverage. So you've not gone from little to huge, and the plantings are a great improvement to the property. I think your engineer and your consultant headed you in the right direction, though, for the, it's sort of like a perk test. And if you were doing any project besides one that's on sewer, you'd do a perk test anyway. So it's not a huge, if it was like a $5,000 incurrence, it would be a little different, because then you'd be at the building department level, and you'd be doing that anyway. This is, in a way, a protection, not just for the environment, but as you as an applicant, because then your design can be based on what is in the ground, and and like I say, it's as Tim just said, it's like a perk test, which you would do if you were upgrading your septic system. I know this is sewer, but that's what goes with almost every plan we see, is a perk test has been performed to give a soil analysis, and that's the piece that we're kind of missing right now to understand what's underneath.
Sure, but your main concern primarily is the structural integrity
Yes,
of
it
the
is.
house,
But
right?
I was just saying, it's the comparison of how you're gonna perform that soil analysis is exactly the same as you would be doing a perk test to discover what's underground and what will have the integrity to hold your house.
Okay, but certainly, if we're gonna build a house and incur the cost of that, yes, we would certainly rely on the expertise of a structural engineer that is gonna be handling the footings and the foundation to make sure that the house will stand and withstand time to do that. That's obviously what we're paying them to do.
I think what we're asking for this test to be done,
It's gonna be done
Is-
anyway.
It's gonna be done anyway. When you get to the building phase,
it has
it's
to be
gonna
done. It has to be done, and you may find at this point, if you go a foot down and the rest is peat, your structural engineer may have a different
Use that data.
approach, which may change the footings, which would change what would happen
What
here.
we're looking at.
So let's find out that all out right now. So you just have to come to us once.
Can I make a clarification on some of the numbers as well? The enclosure as proposed is only 40 square feet less than what's existing on site, so it's not a tremendous reduction in structure in your velocity zone. So again, the staff is gonna say that that enclosed structure should be reduced. And as far as the added square foot living space in your high hazard area, you're at 2,542.
Okay.
So it's
but-
not just a small, it's a substantial structure that's going in
And
here.
it's also true that the houses in front
Yeah, I know.
all are that way, but it's in the last couple of years that the town has
One
become
directly in front was
much
built in the
more-
90s.
much more concerned about coastal hazards and coastal resiliency and
knew that.
likelihood of storms and so forth. So how we look at things and how we try to condition things to protect the environment changes also, depending on the new information that we get in town. And there's a lot of information in the last year or two that make us much more cautious about what can be, how things have to be conditioned in certain areas.
Sure, and I totally understand that, but also understand we're the taxpayers in the town, and we obviously have paid a lot of tax money to the town for a number of years. The houses that are directly in front of us on Surf Drive that have been built within the last 4 years, this board has granted them the same permissions that we're asking for. So we are behind them, and you're saying that you're saying you don't want to do it for us when you've already approved houses that surround us within the last 4 years.
Right, and information that we've gotten here in the town, working on the coastal resiliency aspect of the town, has been within the last 2 years.
Okay?
So there may have been decisions made 4 years ago, and we may look at things, and we do look at things differently now.
New information.
But you also look at a fairness assessment of what's been granted versus what somebody is requesting. It's,
What we look at is how you can best protect the environment. Something comes to us, it's not that these things are grandfathered in. These aren't grandfathered.
I absolutely agree, but we're actually making the property better, and we're raising the property for, for the existing flood regulations and the velocity zone regulations. We're making the property, we're improving the property and spending a lot of money to do that. Is the board gonna take that into consideration?
Sir, you're improving the property because it's a requirement of the riverfront regs and your mitigation requirement for the plant, so.
And the building
And the
code.
building
And the
code.
building code, so, I mean, yeah, you're improving the property, but that property doesn't have one bit of vegetation on it and hasn't in years, so you are required to put the plants in because of what you're doing on the property and the increase in the impervious surface on the property. So, yes, it's an improvement, but it's not, it's a requirement, so.
And we're gonna conform to that. Our intent is to conform to that. So, I would appreciate your consideration. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
New?
Mr. Noonan, I'm probably the villain in this piece, because I was the one that raised a lot of these issues, but as the other commissioners have pointed out, part of our concern is protecting the resource areas. But also, our interest in many respects in asking for the things that we're asking for, whether it be soil tests and engineering on the foundations, all of that is the kind of thing that you as a property owner should know up front, so you have a good estimation of your cost. Having been in the business for 30 years, I hated to go to landowners and say, well, I gave you a price to build this house. Oh, I just discovered this and I've got to put a roof on it. Oh, that'll be an extra. And I'm being facetious here, but you might as well know exactly what you're up against. And you want to know, I think, if you're going to invest the kind of money you're going to invest to make this house the way you want it, you want to know in the end of the day that it will withstand these storms and that the foundation will support the structure. And so, in a sense, what we're asking for is we're looking for the knowledge of what's going to happen on that property in advance so we can properly condition it. But at the same time, we're giving you the same benefit of the thing, so you know what it's gonna cost you to build it.
Okay, anything else?
Tim wants to ask for a continuance.
We've heard the board's concerns, so I'm gonna ask for a continuance so I can review them with our client.
Tim, how much time do you need?
When's the next meeting, 12th?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll get the soil guy out there Monday, Tuesday. I'll get you everything by Wednesday the 5th, or the 12th, so,
Okay,
if that
He needs
works.
to get this stuff in by the
February?
Yeah,
could be good
that's
for
good
us.
for us.
Is that doable on your end?
You're gonna discuss everything with your client, including the breakaway panels and everything
We're
like
gonna
that?
discuss everything in a little bit.
Okay. Tim, you can have the 5th all day.
No, not the
No,
5th.
he wants the
No, I
12th.
meant the 12th. You gotta get everything in by the
At
5th.
the request of the applicant, I make a
Hold on.
Yeah, 5th, 12th is fine, I'm sorry.
motion to continue this to the 12th,
Second.
February 12th.
Yes, correct.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote to continue this until February 12th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hope he makes his son's basketball game.
February what? Okay.
Does that work for you?
No,
I mean, we can-
I get,
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend, Tim.
You can use the vote. This one,
yeah,
that's one we're talking about.
right. What about the one above it?
That's 219.
219?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, next up is 58 Cape Cod, that is continued. Continued hearing under notice of intent, 163 Bay Road is continued.
Yes, that's correct.
Request to amend the existing order of conditions, the Woods Hole Martha's Vineyard Nantucket
No, I
Steamship
can't.
Authority, Woods Hole Ferry Terminal, end of Railroad Avenue, Woods Hole, Falmouth, Mass., for permission to amend DEP SE 25-4151 to revise the design of the permanent terminal building and the utility. I think that's supposed to say building, no?
What is this, which sheet?
Terminal building and probably utility building.
Utility
Probably,
building.
I'm just
sorry.
reading it literally,
You,
so.
Betsy,
Oh,
before you
boy.
leave. What?
So,
You brought
where
friends.
do I go on this?
Project team,
Okay.
You put, you say
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I
amendment,
see 18 on it, and I'm like,
you
okay.
put amendment,
Amendment.
You good on the date now?
and then
March
good.
4th,
I have to recuse myself.
Bless you.
for the record, Betsy Gladfelter is recusing herself.
February 19th, Case Road, February 6th, for Cape Cod.
For the record, for this hearing, Betsy is recused?
Yes. Because Susan has to do the minutes off the tape, so,
Yeah,
yep.
just wanted to make sure, our secretary got that.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Bob Davis. I'm the general manager of the Steamship Authority. So with us today, I have architects and engineers. So Liam Davis from DIA Studios. Biscoletti. And Steve Lecco from GZA. So actually, they're more qualified to speak on this than I am, so I can turn it over to them.
Okay. Let's, can we put the easel under the monitor? The cameras will pick it up better.
Sure.
Thank you. And then if you would, use the podium and the microphone for the people at home. Thank you.
Maybe turn a light.
Thank you very much. Steve Lecco from GZA, as Bob Davis explained. The reason why we're here today is to seek an amended order of conditions from an existing order of conditions that was issued back in April of 2016 for the Woods Hole Ferry Terminal project. Specifically, the changes that we're looking for approval from you for are some changes in building footprint, in size for the permanent terminal building and for the utility building. As you know, there's an existing temporary terminal building, and that will eventually be dismantled, and then the new permanent building would be constructed. So I'm hoping this reaches. This graphic is in your, is in the application. It shows, this is the build-out condition by the water. Okay, this is what, once all of this water work is done, this is what it's gonna look like, and this is what was approved in the original order. But what we're specifically looking at here is this dotted black line is the previously approved building footprint. And what we're looking to do is shift the building slightly back, further away from the water,
and go from a two-story building to a one-story building with a slight increase in the building footprint, but an overall significant decrease in the amount of gross square footage, because we are going from a two-story building to a one-story building. The building height would decrease by 12 feet from what was previously approved. So that is what we're proposing for this terminal building. The utility building, you'll see outlined in dotted black, that was what was previously approved. And what we're looking to do is basically reconfigure that slightly by bringing it out here a little further, and actually the building structure itself would be further away from the water. The overall size of the building would increase. The building footprint would increase by 1,800 square feet, but within the regulated area, which in this case is land subject to coastal storm flowage, because we are within the 1% annual chance flood, the 100-year flood, that would only be about 800 square feet. So these two buildings, as previously approved, this building is entirely within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Utility building, only the very waterward portion of it is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. So we're basically looking for an amended order of conditions for slight shift and change for this building and for the utility building. That's summary of what we're proposing, and if you have any questions, be happy to answer those for you.
Staff doesn't have any questions.
I'm going to start, if you would, just to clarify or confirm, the terminal building is going to increase the footprint by 888 square feet.
That's correct.
Okay. In the utility building, is this right? The footprint increases by 1,814 square feet?
Yes.
Not the growth. The gross is
Right,
double
that's
that.
just the net change from what was originally approved. But within the regulated area of the land subject to coastal storm flowage, it's 768 square feet.
Okay. Peter, we'll start with you.
Was there any discussion about mitigation for the increased square footage?
Well, we reviewed the Wetlands Protection Act in terms of land subject to coastal storm flowage. Really, there's really no performance standards per se associated with that resource, because what we're really talking about is a slight displacement in flood zone of basically the ocean. So it's not like an inland river situation where if you increase the square footage, you're displacing some flood storage. There's really not any, if you were to calculate the flood storage lost here, it would be so small you
1
couldn't
inch is
even
30
calculate
feet.
it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Everything's improved with file lot.
no further questions.
Steve?
No, I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Kevin?
Is that a Goldberg Zono shirt?
I'm sorry?
Your shirt, is that Goldberg Zono?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
we're known as
brings back memories.
We're known as GZA now.
Huh?
You like it?
Yeah, GZA, right.
Kevin's having flashbacks.
Yeah, lots of fun. No question.
Okay.
Maury, you ready?
I had no questions.
Okay. Courtney?
No questions.
All right. It's a pleasure.
I make a
Motion to take it under advisement, Mr. Chairman? Oh,
Second.
no, do we have to do that with an amended?
Yep, second.
Good. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Close the hearing, take it under advisement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thanks for moving the main building back.
Well, I feel embarrassed that we weren't able to give you a little more controversy. You know. You're willing to live with that?
Sorry to ruin your night.
Jen.
Well done.
Anyway. Surprised that group's not here.
Well, because they got what they wanted.
Yep.
This one I have no idea.
I guess it doesn't matter. Next up, continued request for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. Robert Sullivan, Wings Pond LLC, 63 North Falmouth Highway, Falmouth, Mass. Request for confirmation of the following resource area boundaries. Isolated land subject to flooding and freshwater wetland.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we still need to work with the consultant on the delineation. They went out and did reflag the missing flags, but now those flags are a little higher than the flags that were out there, so we need a new plan. So we're working with them. We're requesting a continuance until February 19th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue to February 19th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to
It is
adjourn.
unanimous.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me?
We're adjourned.
An hour too long? Well-studied